Back to my series, The Bible Doesn't Make Any Sense. Today's episode, Joshua chapter 7. This chapter is a really good example of God doing the absolute most. In this chapter, there's the Israelites and then there's Joshua, who's like the leader of them. Joshua had basically replaced Moses as like God's favorite. However, some of these Israelites were apparently a little greedy. Specifically, this dude named Achan. Little bit of a backstory. When the Israelites would give like offerings to God, those things that they gave to God were seen as only for God, and if anyone else touched them, they were to be destroyed. Our boy Achan over here saw a couple of shiny things and decided to get to stealing. He didn't tell anybody. While this is happening, Joshua and his army are planning another attack on another city. They just got done with Jericho. These niggas move fast. So Joshua sends some spies over there to the place that he's getting ready to take over so they can see how many people are over there so they know how many people they will need to take over. When they returned to Joshua, they said, not all of the army will have to go against Ai. Take 2,000 or 3,000 men and take them and do not weary the whole army, for only a few people live there. So Joshua sends the 3,000 men to attempt to take over this little town, and the people that are living there actually end up chasing Joshua's army all the way to the fucking gate, and they ended up killing 36 of their men while doing so. Joshua hears this news and he's like, God, why have you forsaken me? We tried to take over this town and now 36 of my soldiers are dead. What the fuck? The Lord said to Joshua, stand up. What are you doing down on your face? Israel has sinned. They have violated my covenant, which I commanded them to keep. They have taken some of the devoted things. They have stolen, they have lied, and they have put them with their own possession. This is why the Israelites cannot stand against their enemies. They turn their backs and run because they have been made liable to destruction. I will not be with you anymore unless you destroy whatever among you is devoted to destruction. So let me get this straight. God watched Achan steal the devoted things, did nothing to stop him, didn't even tell his anointed guy, Joshua, that this even happened, watched 36 of his devoted followers die in battle, and then when Joshua had the nerve to be sad about his soldiers dying, God is like, I don't give a fuck about that shit. This dude has stolen something, and y'all aren't gonna prosper until this dude dies. Like, why didn't God just stop him from stealing it, or just strike him dead as soon as he stole it? I don't understand why the 36 men had to die to make a fucking point. Also, there was like zero compassion for the 36 men that just died. Like, God does not give a fuck about those men that just died. Then God said, in the morning, present yourselves tribe by tribe. The tribe the Lord chooses shall come forward, clan by clan, family by family, man by man. Whoever is caught with the devoted things shall be destroyed by fire, along with all that belongs to him. They do exactly that. They narrow it down, and they get to Achan. The only thing unclear is, I don't know if God is like telling Joshua, okay, pick this family. Okay, pick this clan. Okay, pick this. Like, I don't know how this part is happening, but okay. Like, he could just shine a little flashlight on Achan instead of, like, putting everybody through all of this, but whatever. Joshua looks at Achan and he's like, bro, just tell the truth, come on. Achan is like, all right, it's true. I saw the shit. It looked nice. I took it. I hid it in my tent, and the silver is underneath my tent. Then Joshua, together with all of Israel, took Achan, the silver, the robe, the gold bar, his sons and daughters, his cattle, donkeys, and sheep, his tent, and all that he had to the valley of Achor. Joshua said, why have you brought trouble onto us? The Lord will bring trouble on you today. Then all of Israel stoned him, and after they stoned the rest, they burned them. Over Achan they heaped a large pile of rocks, which still remains to this day. Then the Lord turned from his fierce anger. I love how they end the chapter like, and the monster was appeased. That's exactly what this is. He wasn't satisfied until this man, his children, and everything he owned was dead and burned. Why did the sons and daughters have to die? What did they do? And the animals, they ain't do shit either. Y'all know I had to find a Christian website that was going over this chapter and trying to explain why it's not as bad as it sounds. This article argues that Joshua chapter 7 is a humbling testimony to the seriousness of sin, and not just its seriousness in our own lives, but its effect on others' lives. It is a clear reminder to us that when we sin against God, it doesn't just affect us, it affects the people around us. Is this the reason why so many Christians are worried about, like, people living in sin? Because if I sin, then it somehow reflects badly on you and your God's eyes. Baby, if your God feels the need to punish you for the way that I live my life, that's not a me problem, that's a your God problem. There's no possible way to justify this. You cannot tell me that it's perfectly okay that because this man did a bad thing, his kids had to die as well. Not to mention the 36 men that died in the battle that God couldn't give less of a fuck about. Like, damn, for a merciful God, this motherfucker sure does love killing folks.
Let me add a little bit. So she has a great series, and I recommend that you guys go and follow her on TikTok. She has a very great series, and she makes some great videos as well. I just want to add a little bit more to this entire story. When you think about it in a broader perspective, then one of the things that you see is there's this continuous idea of the Israelite people having to go through these situations where they are blessed by this God, but then they do something wrong and then they are punished by this God. And the wrong is always some minor type of offense, because this God has said, hey, give me everything. All this shit belongs to me. I need the gold. I need the silver. Why does a God need gold? Why does a God need silver? Why does he need these things? No God should need these things. And I know people are going to say, well, it's a representation of your fealty to this God. But this God requires your fealty, requires you to love him in order for him to do nice things for you or to keep you sane, is bullshit within itself. What it really shows is that the history of the Israelite people is such that they have been conquered by the Assyrians, by the Kemetic people, conquered by the Babylonians, the Persians. So in their stories, in order to give themselves a level of antiquity and a level of pride, they create these narratives where they were the victors, but because of their disobedience to God, they always seem to go back into these states of punishments. And then when you think, also have to think about this. Those people at that time frame who wrote this story, and especially got codified during the time of Ezra, coming out of Babylonian captivity, they took these stories to be literal. Like, this is their literal history, is what they believe. It doesn't matter how we symbolize them today or how people try to symbolize them today. This is what they actually believe happened in their history. So they believe that this God says that if one person sins, then I have to punish everybody else. So he had a human sacrifice with the 36 people that got killed in the battle. And then he stoned the hell out. He had the other people, Achan's family, stoned. And like she said, Christian said, well, this is how sin affects other people around you. That is an unfair God, a merciless God that says that because this one patron of the family did something, that everybody else has to be punished. And I want you to think about it. Even the animals. And what did the animals do? They're just living, doing their own thing. Why do those animals have to be punished? They didn't choose who's their master or anything of that sort. But for those who say that it's symbolic, I want you to realize that, and I'm going to ask you this question. Did they stone people to death back in the day, in ancient times? Is that a possibility? Is that something that they did? The answer is yes. They stoned people. So when you look at this story, they literally believed that it was okay to pick up stones and throw them and hit people with them until they died. Do you understand how gruesome and cruel that is, to stone people to death? And I'm talking about his whole family, the women and the children and the animals are being held down, tied up to a pole, stake, whatever. And people are throwing rocks at them as hard as they possibly can to kill these people. How do you worship this cruel God? This is why I love her series, because it just shows how cruel this God is, and really is showing you how cruel the culture was at that time frame, because these stories are based on the culture of the day, of that day, and that is what they did in that culture. So it's not metaphoric. It has nothing to do with anything else other than this is what they literally believe and they literally did in their lifetime. So Ezra's time frame, when they went back to Jerusalem, would have instituted this type of punishment for somebody who does something that's disobedient towards this God. Literal stoning. Cruel as hell. But y'all have a great day. And remember always, you got to free yourself to be yourself, because your greatness is non-negotiable. Good journey, good vibrations.